No toca Ixchel Xochitl. I'm mixed indigenous from Udo Aztecan, Udo Nahual, or Anuak on my mother's side. And on my father's side, I'm primarily mixed European from the Gauls and the Celt. And I've was born in the lands of the Ohlone in California, and I'm sharing my words with you all today in the lands of the Hawaiians on the big island of Hawaii. So I wanted to take some time as we're at this really exciting moment of launching Xi'im Ek Balam and sharing the fruits of our labor publicly for the first time, to invite you all to learn a little bit more about this concept that's really fundamental to our work called Eco Social Acupuncture. And the idea of acupuncture, of course, is familiar to many of you. You might go see an acupuncturist, someone who's trained in traditional Chinese medicine for an ailment that's physical or emotional, and they'll place needles in your body. And if you have a headache, they won't necessarily place a bunch of needles in your head. Or if you're having problems with your heart, they won't necessarily put a whole bunch of needles in your heart. What they do instead is work with the energy and the meridian lines across your body, knowing which ones influence the different systems, because of course, we're a full system. What's happening in the head is influenced by what's happening elsewhere in the body. What's happening in the heart is influenced by what's happening elsewhere in the body. And most important for our bodies is the fact that the energy flows. And this is true physically and emotionally. When emotional energy doesn't stuck, we become passive aggressive. We get stuck in self-sabotage traps. And sometimes we also get physically ill. The same thing happens when physical things don't move in our body. If we don't have regular bowel movements, we become sick. If our body isn't able to properly process toxins, we become sick. So what's central for our well-being as individuals is movement of energy, movement of our physical being, movement and progression of our ideas that allows for growth. And the same thing is true for all living beings, including our first mother, the earth. The earth, of course, is one system. She is a full system, and she's also part of a system that is a greater system of the cosmos. And so when energy on the earth can't move like it wants to move, she becomes sick. When she's not able to properly digest her toxins that are amplified and directly influenced by some of her inhabitants, she has energy that becomes built up that needs to get pushed out. And this can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can manifest through natural disaster. It can manifest through global pandemics. And it can also manifest in energy currents, in large political changes, in large movements of government change, things of this nature. So it's really important, just as we're moving into a time of better understanding ourselves, moving towards collective alignment and harmonization with all that is, we want to understand how our bodies work better, how our mother works better. We want to understand better where we are, where we're living, the space that we occupy, so that we can be in good harmony with her. We can be in good harmony with ourselves, work for optimization to function towards our highest alignment, and work for optimization to function in service of our mother to our best capability. And some of the first things that are critical for laying a good foundation like that are to understand her. So Eco Social Acupuncture is essentially a practice of understanding the mother. And I'll share a little presentation with you all about this concept and how we came to choose it as a concept for to describe our work practice. So the concept of eco-acupuncture has been around for a while. And so is the concept of social acupuncture, which has been made popular by various artists working strategically to create change in specific regions from a social perspective. And what we're doing as Xi'im Ek Balam is combining these two concepts to describe the way that we're working both with communities and the earth herself to create larger global change. And so what the concept means is, just like the acupuncturist who's working with traditional medicine, placing needles along specific meridians to help create change in the body, we also are looking at the earth meridians and working with communities in these these specific sacred sites that have great influence, amplified influence on the health and impact of the globe at large, to collaborate with communities to envision and practice liberation and what it means to be in good and healthy relationship with one another. So this is a map of the river systems by Grasshopper Geography of North, Central, and South America. For this image, you might think that the map is upside down. And that's really just to draw attention to the fact that normally when we look at a map, we see North America on the top and South America on the bottom. And then when we look at a global map, normally, as we'll see in some of the maps that I've presented today, or that I will present today, you'll see North America on the top left corner and South America on the bottom left corner, and then Europe on the upper right corner, and then Africa on the bottom right corner. And the reason it's important to draw attention to this is because what it does is our brains typically look at images from top left to top right, and from bottom left to bottom right, the same way we read a paper. So when we have North America in the top left corner, what it does subconsciously in the image is communicate that North America is where we start. North America is, you might say, the most important, is kind of what the visual subtext of that language is. And then secondarily, the subtext of the image says is Europe comes a close second. And then we move to the second line of information, which is the Southern Hemisphere. And that kind of tracks with how colonialism treats or has impacted the Southern Hemisphere of the world. So part of what we do at Xi'im Ek Balam is also draw attention to some of these visual languages and how they influence, consciously or subconsciously, the way that we think about the world and the frames we place on the world. Because of course, when we're floating in outer space, there's no up and there's no down. It just depends on the orientation from where you take the photo, but there's no right side up. So what we're looking at here is the river systems of this continent. And this is an important place for us to start because it's really the inspiration for how our process as Xi'im Ek Balam came into being. which is that when we look at the water, there are no borders in the way that we think about them traditionally in the United States or even globally at this particular moment in time. The river system and the river basin of the Amazon stretches across multiple nation states. Stretches across Colombia, Ecuador, Brazil, Peru, into Bolivia a little bit. And so what does it mean to be having these really, I mean, if you look at the text that's written about how the US-Mexico border was established, arbitrary systems of delineation between one nation state and the next. And I feel like looking at and beginning with the water, understanding what unifies us, helps to bring to the forefront for me the absurdity of the logic systems that we're living within right now, and also helps to presence how they're really unsustainable. And so what we're doing with the concept of eco social acupuncture is trying to draw attention to the unsustainability of these epistemologies, and then presence practices that will help us move us into a future that is more sustainable and in alignment with the nature of what is. So with that, actually, I'll just begin with showing this beautiful video of the ocean system taken by NASA. And you can see, of course, when we're looking at this, that the waters are in perpetual motion. The waters of our Earth don't adhere to the water systems that are governed by a certain nation state. What happens in the water on one side of the planet influences the whole planet. And so our Earth, like the waters, are in a state of perpetual motion. I'm sure many of you have heard of continental plates. And these plates, sometimes we think of them as being fixed, or that a long time ago with Pangea, they were all one plate, and then they floated and they moved and they became multiple plates. But the reality is that these plates continue to move. And that's what causes things like volcanoes. It also causes tsunamis, and it causes earthquakes. And the Earth core itself, you may have heard, is also shifting. So its directionality usually is consistent. And then it's suspected that over a course of time, perhaps every 60 years or so, they haven't tracked enough data on this to have a conclusive timeline. But around every 60 years, it's suspected, the core of the Earth begins to go in the other direction, rotating in an opposite way to the way that the exterior of the Earth is rotating. And so this is really important also because not only are the waters moving, not only is the air moving, the land is moving. The actual land beneath our feet is moving. And the foundation of that land, the center of the place that we call home, is shifting its relationship relative to us. So you could say, you know, we're all on the same train, we're all going in the same direction. No, that's not true. We're a dynamic sphere. We're living in a space that's dynamically shifting its relationship to itself. The entire Earth is in motion. And so what does that mean in relationship to us as occupants of the Earth? You can see some of these continental divides here. They're oftentimes indicated by mountain ranges, both in the oceans and on the land masses. And I will come back to this part in a moment. But as the Earth moves, so do the creatures atop her. So this is the migration pattern of the swine-sun hawk. This is the migration pattern of the monarch butterfly. These are migration patterns of multiple different animals on the North American continent and Africa and Asia. And these are whale migration patterns. So just as everything in the earth herself moves, so do her creatures. And so do, of course, people. And people move increasingly during times of natural disaster, during times of economic distress. And what's important, just like with the internal system of the body to help the channels of energy flow, is that we create systems that support Mother Nature in her flow and movement of energy. And like Oren Lyon says, one of the great peace teachers from the Haudenosaunee, the law is Mother Nature. And if you don't listen to the law, you will find yourself in trouble. The law is. We don't make the law. The law is. It's our job to understand the law of nature, to understand the nature of existence so that we can function harmoniously with it. And so the last piece I just want to say before, kind of as an orienting, before talking about the specifics of what eco-social acupuncture means in our practice, is just thinking about the perpetual motion, not just of what happens on the surface of the earth, what happens within the earth, but how the earth is situated within the entire cosmos. So of course, the earth is part of her own rotation system that is the solar system that has its own movement patterns that have been tracked by the Maya and the Aztec and many other peoples throughout the globe for centuries. And our solar system, of course, is moving within a galaxy. It's moving within a spiral. And so what you might already be starting to think about and starting to notice is these cycles of movement, these rhythms of movement, sometimes these spirals of movement, but there are patterns that if we get out of the way and listen to, we can begin to understand the pulse of movement and the intentions of these rhythms in a way that allows us to move with them. And of course, our galaxy is just one of many galaxies that are also moving. So then that brings us to thinking about, we just talked about space, like our spatial movement. And then the other thing to think about is how we perceive our spatial movement in relationship to time. And so eco-social acupuncture, if we're thinking about specific sacred sites, specific communities, we're also thinking about specific temporal moments to have the most impact. So we're working with the timing of the moon, like many First Peoples do throughout the globe and throughout millennia. We're also working with the timing of the sun, the 4 quarter moments of the year and the cross quarter moments of the year. These are important moments for us for really clarifying intention, creating specific types of actions. And of course, First Peoples have known this for millennia as well. These sacred times of the year are often aligned with certain ceremonies. Ceremonies around offering, ceremonies around planting seeds, planting intentions, etc. And so we just talked about the movement of animals across our planet. And there are also movement patterns of people that happen throughout different moments of time. This is an image of the Great Migration after the liberation of enslaved peoples. This is the migration pattern of the Trail of Tears during the genocide of indigenous people. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about how through our collaboration with First Peoples throughout the globe to strengthen our practices of collaboration, we created a document that has some of the principles that have come out of this work for a project called Borders Like Water. And that's downloadable on our website. You can see some of the different ideas that came out of that work. And then I thought I would do a spotlight on two of the main projects that are highlighted on our website, which is We the Trees and our work with the Moon Group in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. So in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, this is one of the communities connected by the Swanson Hawk with the Southern Hemisphere. We work with a number of mixed Indigenous women on the cycle of the moon in communities of prayer. And we're also beginning the process to steward 30 acres of land right at the US-Mexico border and neighboring a nature sanctuary. So this is going to be a space where people can come together to practice re-indigenization, learn about the plants that are indigenous to the region, learn how to practice traditional building practices, earth-based building practices, and where we can also develop climate resiliency strategies based on indigenous wisdom. So this is an image from one of the ceremonies we did on the land with Dr. Renda Dion Madrigal, who's also part of our team. Really wonderful person who is Turtle Mountain Chippewa and married into the Serrano community, I believe. I think I might be getting the name of the other tribe that she's from incorrect. But is the father of, or excuse me, her husband is Luke Madrigal, masterful storyteller, and pictured here is one of her daughters and participants from the Moon Group when we did a ceremony and storytelling workshop over a number of months in the Rio Grande Valley. And this is a picture of the land, also collaged with some individuals from communities that we've connected with in the Amazon, which is the other project that I'll tell you about in just a moment. So you can see in the back the border wall from the land where we are and some of the trees that are native to that region. So the other place that we work is, or the other project that you can read about right now on the website is called We the Trees, which is in the Ecuadorian Amazon, right outside of Coca on the Rio Napo. And we're building an intertribal peace center with the 3 tribes that have stewarded the land in this region for the longest, the Waorani, the Quechua, and the Shuar. And so the space, and I'm really excited about this, we were able to purchase the land for this project, something we've been dreaming about for probably 4 years. We've been dreaming on this, we've been looking at land, and we finally purchased some land for this project, for this initiative, and we're going to be beginning on site later this year, where it'll be a place where all 3 tribes can come together and meet in peace. And this idea is and like the work that we're doing in the Rio Grande Valley, it's really inspired by the great law of peace, and the peace teachings of Oren Lyons and the great peacemaker. And I'll share that story briefly here, which is that the Haudenosaunee, or the Iroquois, they're sometimes called, have 6 different tribes that for a long time were fighting in very brutal ways, and it was causing a lot of devastation in their communities. And at one point, someone called the Great Peacemaker came to the region, and he traveled by boat in a stone boat so that people would know that something unusual, something was unusual about him, that he was bringing a special teaching. And the Great Peacemaker brought the law of peace. He brought practices that helped to teach people how to live in harmony with one another and how to stop their conflicts. And ultimately, all 6 tribes that had been warring previously buried their weapons under the tree of peace. And the tribes came together with an agreement on how to live in peace with one another. And that is how they work today. And so these teachings have been very inspirational for Dr. Madrigal and myself in the work that Xi'im Ek Balam is doing throughout the continent. And specifically, it applies here in the Amazon, where these 3 tribes have fought historically, much as a result of colonization, although not exclusively, sometimes before colonization in some cases. And they don't fight actively now, but there's the desire and shared interest for more collaboration. And so what our project is doing is creating a space for that. And over the next year, we will create a film with this group where, using practices of somatics, QHHT, community art-based practices, we will imagine and activate the multiverse in which there's peace, collaboration, harmonization, and strengthening between the 3 tribes. And we will use that vision as a roadmap for how we then create and activate the space that we're building into. And so that's kind of a little bit of an overview of what Eco Social Acupuncture looks like in practice for us as Xi'im Ek Balam. Just to kind of recap a little bit, we're using that same concept of finding nodes along meridians to infuse energy with in a way that blends an understanding of how the environment, the physical environment, the ecosystems, and the social systems work together to create shared healing. And that it's with these 2 systems together that we'll be able to reach harmonization, alignment, sustainability that we really desire. And from the particular work that we're stewarding at Xi'im Ek Balam, we're coming at this from an Indigenous and mixed Indigenous perspective. So we're really centering the wisdoms of First People as kind of a foundation for understanding how to steward the earth in these regions, and then inviting other communities in to create harmony and amplification of these strategies and adaptation of the strategies. It's not going to always be practical for everyone in the community to be approaching solutions from exactly the same way. So it's very important that we each bring our individual cultural perspectives. And when we're working in a region, we're working with the First Peoples of that region, usually first. So I hope that that is helpful, that this gives you a little bit of a understanding of the what it is that we're doing and the why it is that we're doing it. And what I'll say also with respect to the why is that this is how we see creating models for long-term sustainable change. So what's really distinct about the work that we're doing is we're taking the ideas of, alternative economies and how do we build a better future and how do we prepare for climate change? And we're practicing that in place with specific communities. And we're doing that through the dream work, through the somatic work, through the cultural restoration, through the cultural archiving, and through the cultural amplification. So it's been really nice and exciting to share with you all. I'll take myself off full screen and just give a heartfelt thank you. Yeah, and I just wanted to invite you all to join us in whatever way feels right. You are welcome to join our email list. And something that's great about that is that when we do things like giveaways of free one-on-one sessions with some of our collaborators, or classes on some of the wisdom teachings that are coming out of the communities, or recordings of the lectures that we're doing as we're moving across the globe, all of that is coming out through our newsletter. And the other reason to stay in touch with us is that we're developing a lot of really cool content, like visual images. Right now, we're making cards to help people understand and time track for themselves the Mayan and Aztec calendar. And lots of great graphics, lots of great images, posters that you can print up will be coming out in the next year. So you really want to be engaged with us in that way. To make sure that you're hearing what's coming out of the different communities that we're working with, and seeing how that might relate to what you're doing in your community, so that you can imagine and apply how to make change in exciting ways that prepare us for the futures that we want to step into. All right, well, Tlatzloklamati, thank you so much for joining me here today for this sacred time, and I'm looking forward to sharing more with you all as our work develops.